15 bikers rolled into an Oakwood Crossing BBQ joint, looking to establish their territory. They found a retired Marine Corps Master Gunnery Sergeant instead. What happened next would transform the most notorious motorcycle gang in 3 states, turn hardened criminals into community heroes, and teach the Black Scorpions a powerful lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the quiet veteran eating burnt ends in the corner. They thought they were intimidating a small-town restaurant. Instead, they picked a fight with one of the most decorated combat veterans in Marine Corps history. This is the story of how a pack of bikers insulted the wrong retired Marine at a BBQ pit stop, and how their worst mistake became their greatest salvation. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from. If you like this story, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have a special story for you. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gravel parking lot of Big Jim's BBQ and Grill, a beloved roadside establishment that had served Oakwood Crossing for over 3 decades. The scent of hickory smoke drifted through the air, carrying with it the promise of perfectly charred brisket and fall-off-the-bone ribs that had made the place famous across 3 counties. Marcus Reynolds sat at his usual corner table, methodically arranging his weekly order of burnt ends and cornbread. His weathered hands, steady from years of precision in combat, moved with deliberate care as he positioned each piece exactly where he wanted it. The small Marine Corps pin on his faded denim jacket caught the sunlight filtering through the window, a modest reminder of sacrifices made far from home. Emma Thompson, who'd been serving at Big Jim's longer than most of the town's residents had been alive, approached his table with a fresh pot of coffee. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her movements carrying the efficiency of someone who'd walked these floors so many times she could do it blindfolded. "Your usual, Marcus?" she asked, topping off his cup with practiced precision. "Big Jim's trying out a new sauce recipe today. Says it's got a kick that'll wake up even your Marine Corps taste buds." Marcus allowed himself a small smile, the kind that barely touched his lips, but warmed his eyes. "Thank you, Emma. Though after what I ate in Fallujah, nothing much surprises me anymore." The peaceful scene was shattered by the growing rumble of motorcycles, the sound echoing off the restaurant's wooden walls until the windows rattled in their frames. Emma's hand trembled slightly, causing the coffee pot to clink against Marcus's cup. His own hands remained steady as he reached for his napkin, carefully wiping a few drops that had spilled. The Black Scorpions arrived like a storm, 15 motorcycles filling the parking lot in a choreographed display of power and intimidation. Their chrome-laden bikes gleamed menacingly in the afternoon sun, each bearing the gang's notorious emblem, a black scorpion clutching a bloody dagger. Families already seated in the restaurant drew closer together, some quietly gathering their children and belongings. Duke Morrison dismounted first, his massive frame unfolding from his bike like a predator rising from rest. His leather cut bore more patches than the others, telling stories of violence and territory claimed across 3 states. Behind him, his Lieutenant Mike Razor Stevens and 13 other riders formed an imposing wall of leather and attitude. "Well, well," Duke's voice boomed across the lot as he stretched, making a show of surveying his surroundings. "Looks like we found ourselves a nice little gold mine, boys. Time to introduce ourselves to the local business community." Marcus continued eating, appearing oblivious to the commotion. His movements remained measured, precise, the calm demeanor of a man who had faced far worse than leather-clad bullies. He cut each piece of meat with military precision, his attention seemingly focused entirely on his meal. 2 scorpions entered first, their boots heavy on the wooden floor. They made their way to the counter where Big Jim himself stood, his usually jovial face set in hard lines. The rest of the gang followed, filling the restaurant with the smell of leather and exhaust fumes, deliberately bumping tables and chairs as they moved. Emma tried to continue her rounds, her hands shaking as she attempted to clear tables while avoiding the bikers' increasingly aggressive posturing. A younger waitress had already retreated to the kitchen, leaving Emma to handle the floor alone. "Hey, Grandma," one of the bikers called out, deliberately knocking a glass off a nearby table. "Better clean that up before someone gets hurt." Marcus set down his fork, the movement so subtle it was almost imperceptible. His eyes, however, began scanning the room with the tactical precision that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours. "Ma'am," he called quietly to Emma, his voice carrying just enough authority to draw her attention. "Could I get some more coffee when you have a moment?" Emma gratefully retreated to his corner, finding unexpected sanctuary near his table. The coffee pot trembled in her hands as she poured, but Marcus's steady presence seemed to calm her nerves. Duke noticed the interaction, his eyes narrowing as they fixed on Marcus's Marine Corps pin. The gang leader strutted toward Marcus's table, his heavy boots deliberately scuffing the floor with each step. "Hey, old-timer!" Duke called out, his voice dripping with mock respect. "Nice little piece of jewelry you got there. They sell those at the Army surplus store?" The restaurant fell silent, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Marcus carefully wiped his mouth with his napkin, folded it precisely, and placed it beside his plate. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried to every corner of the room. "Son," he said, still not looking up from his plate, "you're disturbing these good people's meals. I suggest you and your friends leave peacefully." A few of the bikers laughed, but Duke's face darkened. He leaned forward, planting both hands on Marcus's table, deliberately invading his space. "Or what, Grandpa? You gonna call the Marines?" Marcus finally looked up, meeting Duke's gaze. In that moment, something shifted in the room, a subtle change in the air that made 2 of the more experienced bikers exchange uncertain glances. They recognized something in Marcus's eyes, something that spoke of battles fought far from home and victories paid for in blood. "No, son," Marcus replied calmly, his hands relaxed and open on the table. "I won't need to call anyone. Last chance to walk away with dignity." The next few moments would change everything in Oakwood Crossing, though none of them knew it yet. Duke reached for Marcus's Marine Corps pin, intending to rip it off his jacket. Instead, he found his wrist locked in an iron grip, his balance suddenly compromised, and his face headed toward a plate of perfectly arranged burnt ends. What happened next would become the stuff of local legend, but more importantly, it would begin a transformation that would ripple far beyond the walls of Big Jim's BBQ and Grill. The story of how a retired Marine taught a gang of bikers about real strength was about to begin, and nothing in Oakwood Crossing would ever be quite the same. Duke's face never made it to the plate of burnt ends. Instead, his massive frame found itself redirected with surgical precision, his momentum carrying him into an empty chair that somehow appeared exactly where Marcus needed it to be. The Marine's movements were fluid, almost gentle, yet contained a deadly efficiency that spoke of decades of combat experience. Razor Stevens moved first, pulling a heavy chain from his belt. He swung it in a wide arc aimed at Marcus's head, but found himself hitting empty air as the veteran seemed to flow around the attack like water around a stone. In the same fluid motion, Marcus trapped the chain against a table, using Razor's own momentum to send him stumbling into 2 other advancing bikers. The restaurant erupted into chaos as customers scrambled toward the exits. Emma Thompson showed unexpected courage, helping a mother with 2 small children slip out through the kitchen while Big Jim reached for the shotgun he kept under the counter. "Don't," Marcus called to Big Jim, his voice remaining calm despite the 3 bikers now circling him. "No weapons needed here." He stepped away from his table, creating space between himself and the civilians still present. His movements were measured, deliberate, positioning himself precisely where he wanted to be. 2 scorpions rushed him simultaneously, expecting to overwhelm the older man with brute force. Instead, they found themselves meeting empty air as Marcus sidestepped with practiced ease, allowing them to tangle with each other. A precise strike to pressure points left both men gasping on the floor, their muscles refusing to respond properly. Duke had regained his feet, rage contorting his features as he watched his men being systematically dismantled. "Kill him!" he roared, pulling a knife from his boot. 5 more scorpions moved to surround Marcus, while others blocked the exits. Marcus's eyes darted around the room, taking in positions and angles with practiced efficiency. His hands remained relaxed at his sides, his breathing steady. "You boys ever wonder why there's no martial arts training in the Marines?" he asked conversationally, shifting his weight almost imperceptibly. Duke lunged forward with his knife, expecting to find soft flesh. Instead, his arm was caught in a joint lock that sent shooting pain through his shoulder. The knife clattered to the floor as Marcus continued speaking as if giving a lecture. "Because what we learn isn't art," he explained, using Duke's trapped arm to redirect two more attackers into each other. "It's pure function, maximum damage with minimum effort." The next 30 seconds demonstrated exactly what he meant. Marcus moved through the group of bikers like a force of nature, each movement flowing seamlessly into the next. He never struck first, but each time the Scorpions attacked, they found themselves hitting empty air before being redirected into furniture, walls, or each other. One particularly large biker managed to grab Marcus from behind, thinking he'd gained an advantage. Marcus simply shifted his weight, using the man's own grip as leverage to flip him over a table. The crash of breaking furniture punctuated the demonstration of Marine Corps combat efficiency. "Stay down, son," Marcus advised as the biker tried to rise. "You've got a future ahead of you, if you make better choices." Something in his tone made the younger man pause, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. The small Marine Corps tattoo on the biker's forearm suddenly seemed more significant. Duke, having regained his feet once more, saw his crew hesitating. "What are you waiting for?" he roared. "There's 15 of us and one of him." "Numbers don't matter much," Marcus replied quietly, stepping over a groaning biker. "Not when you've forgotten what real strength is about." He moved again, this time with devastating finality. In less than 5 seconds, Duke found himself face down on the floor, his arm locked behind him at an angle that promised excruciating pain if he resisted. The remaining Scorpions froze, watching their leader being subdued with almost casual ease. "Now then," Marcus said, his voice still conversational despite having dismantled 15 bikers without breaking a sweat. "Let's talk about why you boys are really here." The restaurant had gone completely silent except for the groans of fallen bikers. Those customers who hadn't fled watched in amazement as the retired Marine held the notorious gang leader immobile with one hand while reaching for his coffee cup with the other. "Emma," he called softly, "would you mind bringing some ice packs? These boys are going to need them for our conversation." Emma emerged from behind the counter, where she'd been protecting 2 young children during the fight. Her hands had stopped shaking, and there was a glimmer of understanding in her eyes as she watched Marcus treat the fallen bikers not as enemies, but as lost souls in need of guidance. "There's something familiar about how some of you move," Marcus continued, studying the bikers who were slowly picking themselves up. "Military training doesn't quite go away, does it? Even when you try to bury it under leather and attitude." Several of the Scorpions shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. The large biker with the Marine Corps tattoo sat up straighter, unconsciously responding to the authority in Marcus's voice. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus announced, maintaining his hold on Duke. "Those of you who served, raise your hands. Don't lie. I can tell." Slowly, hesitantly, 7 hands went up. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. "Thought so. Now, we're going to sit down like civilized people. Emma's going to bring coffee, and we're going to have a conversation about what Marines, soldiers, and sailors do after the fighting's done." Duke tried to protest, but a slight adjustment of his arm angle convinced him to remain quiet. The other bikers looked uncertain, caught between their gang loyalty and something deeper, a pull toward the kind of authority they'd once known and respected. "But first," Marcus concluded, "you're all going to help clean up this mess. And then you're going to apologize to Emma and Big Jim for disturbing their business. Because that's what honorable men do when they've made a mistake." Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As the bikers began slowly, awkwardly picking up overturned chairs and broken dishes, none of them quite understood that this moment, this odd scene of hardened criminals taking orders from a retired Marine, was the beginning of something extraordinary. A transformation was about to begin, one that would start in a small BBQ joint and ripple out to change countless lives. Emma brought fresh coffee and ice packs, moving among the subdued bikers with growing confidence. Big Jim watched from behind his counter, his shotgun forgotten as he witnessed something he'd never expected to see. The most notorious gang in 3 states taking direction from a quiet veteran who'd just wanted to enjoy his lunch in peace. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the scene of controlled chaos. Outside, life in Oakwood Crossing continued as normal, unaware that within the walls of Big Jim's BBQ and Grill, a story of redemption was about to unfold that would change their town forever. The evening sun cast an amber glow through Big Jim's windows as 15 members of the Black Scorpions sat in awkward silence, nursing various bruises and wounded pride. Duke Morrison remained in his chair, his previous bravado deflated, watching as Marcus Reynolds methodically poured coffee for each man. Emma Thompson moved quietly among them, distributing ice packs and her famous cornbread. 3 tours in Afghanistan, Marcus said quietly, stopping beside the large biker with the Marine Corps tattoo. Force Recon? The man straightened instinctively, muscle memory responding to the command presence in Marcus's voice. Yes, sir. 2 Force Recon, 1 with regular infantry. How did you? The way you moved during the fight. Force Recon has a distinctive style. Marcus set a coffee cup in front of him. What's your name, son? Jake Matthews. But they call me Thunder now. Thunder, Marcus repeated, a hint of amusement in his voice. And before that, it was Sergeant Matthews, wasn't it? Jake nodded, his tough biker exterior cracking slightly. Other gang members watched the exchange with growing interest, particularly those who'd raised their hands earlier when asked about military service. Marcus continued around the room, stopping at each veteran. Army Rangers, he said to one. 82nd Airborne, to another. Navy Corpsman, to a third. Each identification was met with surprised recognition, some men sitting straighter in their chairs, others looking away as if ashamed. Duke watched this transformation with growing unease. What is this, some kind of military reunion? We're the Black Scorpions, not some VA support group. Marcus turned to him slowly. You're neither, Mr. Morrison. You're a man who's been exploiting lost warriors for your own gain. How many of these veterans did you recruit fresh out of service, when they were still trying to figure out how to live in a world that felt too quiet, too meaningless? The accusation hung in the air. Several of the veteran bikers shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact with their leader. Tell me, Jake, Marcus continued, when did you join the Scorpions? Jake stared into his coffee cup. 3 months after getting out. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't hold down a job. Everything felt wrong. The Scorpions offered brotherhood, purpose. And you? Marcus turned to another veteran. Daniel Harrison, former Army Ranger. When did Duke here find you? VA parking lot, Daniel admitted. Was having a rough day. Duke said he understood what I was going through, said the Scorpions could give me back what I lost overseas. Marcus nodded, understanding in his eyes. The camaraderie, the adrenaline, the clear purpose. But instead of defending others, you started threatening them. Instead of protecting communities, you began terrorizing them. The silence in the restaurant grew heavier. Big Jim had started cleaning up behind the counter, but even he paused to listen. What's your point? Duke demanded, though his voice lacked its earlier aggression. My point, Mr. Morrison, is that you took men trained to be protectors and turned them into predators. But that's not who they are. That's not what they were meant to be. Marcus pulled up a chair, sitting with the authority of someone used to commanding attention. I run a veteran rehabilitation center just outside town. We help warriors find their way back to civilian life, but not by suppressing who they are. We channel their skills, their need for brotherhood and purpose, into something meaningful. Jake leaned forward slightly. What kind of something? Emergency response teams, community protection, disaster relief, teaching defensive tactics to law enforcement, real missions, real purpose, but on the home front where it's needed most. The veterans exchanged glances. Something was stirring in the room, a sense of possibility that hadn't existed before. You're crazy, Duke interjected. These men are criminals now. They've got records, warrants, all of which can be addressed, came a new voice. Deputy Claire Wilson stood in the doorway, her stance professional but non-threatening. The department has programs for veterans, especially those willing to make real changes. Marcus nodded to her before continuing. Each of you has a choice to make. You can leave here and continue down the path you're on, or you can remember who you really are, men who once swore to protect and serve. The silence that followed was broken by Jake pushing back his chair and standing. For a moment, tension filled the room, but then he reached up and slowly removed his black scorpion's vest. "I'm done," he said quietly. "Lost myself somewhere along the way. Maybe it's time to find my way back." One by one, other veterans stood, removing their gang colors. Duke watched in disbelief as his carefully built power structure began crumbling. "You're all weak," he snarled, but his words lacked conviction. Marcus turned to him. "No, Mr. Morrison. Weakness is exploiting lost warriors. Strength is admitting when you've lost your way and having the courage to find a better path." Emma approached with fresh coffee, her earlier fear replaced by something like hope. "You know," she said, addressing the veterans, "Big Jim's always looking for help around here. Man can't handle all the holiday rushes by himself anymore." Big Jim looked up, surprised, then nodded slowly. "Could use some reliable folks with discipline and work ethic." The atmosphere in the restaurant had transformed completely. Where there had been tension and violence, now there was something else. Possibility. The veterans who had removed their colors sat straighter, something of their old bearing returning. Marcus stood, surveying the room. The Rehabilitation Center runs a morning PT session at 0600. Those interested in finding a new path are welcome to join. We'll talk more then about options, about clearing records, about building something worthwhile. One of the non-veteran bikers raised his hand hesitantly. "What about those of us who never served? We don't know anything else." Marcus's expression softened slightly. "There's room for everyone willing to change. The skills you learn as a brotherhood can be turned to better purposes. The question is, are you ready to try?" As the sun set over Oakwood Crossing, the first chapter of an extraordinary transformation was drawing to a close. No one in Big Jim's BBQ that evening could have predicted how this confrontation would ripple out to affect not just their town, but communities across the state. A new kind of brotherhood was about to be born, one forged not in violence, but in redemption. The next morning dawned crisp and clear over Oakwood Crossing. The Rehabilitation Center's parking lot, usually empty at this hour except for Marcus's old pickup truck, slowly filled with an unusual mix of vehicles, motorcycles, beaten-up cars, and even a few bikes pedaled by former Scorpions who'd lost their licenses to DUIs. Marcus stood in the pre-dawn light, watching as Jake Matthews arrived first, followed by 7 other veterans from yesterday's confrontation. They moved uncertainly, like men caught between two worlds, their leather cuts absent, but their postures still defensive. "5 minutes early," Marcus noted approvingly. "Some habits don't fade." More former Scorpions trickled in, including several non-veterans who'd taken Marcus up on his offer. By 600, 20 men stood in loose formation, an odd sight in their mix of civilian clothes and remnants of their biker gear. Duke Morrison was conspicuously absent, but Marcus had expected that. Change comes harder to those who've built their identity on controlling others. "First thing you'll learn here," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the lot, "is that strength isn't about intimidation. It's about discipline, purpose, and community." He started them on a routine that blended military PT with practical mobility work. Some of the veterans fell into the rhythm naturally, muscle memory taking over. As they worked through the exercises, a police cruiser pulled up. Deputy Claire Wilson stepped out, accompanied by a man in a suit carrying a briefcase. The former bikers tensed, but Marcus continued the PT session without pause. "Keep going," he instructed, walking over to meet the new arrivals. "Mr. Harrison, you're in charge. Remember the form corrections." Daniel Harrison, the former Army Ranger, automatically took command of the PT session, his natural leadership emerging without the artificial swagger of his Scorpion days. "Marcus," Claire nodded in greeting. "This is James Sullivan from the DA's office. He's here about the rehabilitation program proposal." The prosecutor looked skeptically at the group of former gang members doing push-ups in the parking lot. "Interesting approach, Mr. Reynolds. But these men have serious criminal records. The DA's office needs more than good intentions." Marcus watched as Jake helped a struggling non-veteran with his form, showing the same patience he'd probably used with new Marines years ago. "What you're seeing, Mr. Sullivan, is step one. These men aren't just exercising. They're remembering who they were before the streets got hold of them." A commotion at the lot's entrance drew their attention. 2 pickup trucks had arrived, their beds loaded with construction materials. Big Jim stepped out of the first one, followed by Emma Thompson from the passenger seat. "Morning, Marcus," Big Jim called out. "Brought those supplies you asked for. Figure it's time to build that new training pavilion you've been talking about." The former Scorpions finished their workout, sweat-soaked but standing taller than when they'd arrived. Marcus gathered them around the trucks. "Construction project time," he announced. "Big Jim's donated the materials. Let's show the DA's office what happens when you give warriors a proper mission." Sullivan watched with growing interest as Marcus organized the men into teams, naturally placing veterans in leadership positions while integrating non-veterans throughout the groups. The men fell into task organization with surprising efficiency. "See that?" Marcus said quietly to Sullivan. "They're not falling back on rank or gang hierarchy. They're organizing based on skills and ability. Natural order, not forced control." As the morning progressed, the parking lot transformed into a working construction site. Jake's team handled the heavy lifting, their motorcycles now being used to haul materials rather than intimidate. Daniel's group tackled the precision work, applying their military attention to detail to measuring and cutting. Emma set up a coffee and breakfast station, treating the men with the same maternal care she showed at the restaurant. The change in their behavior was striking, each man thanking her respectfully, some even pulling up chairs for her to rest between coffee runs. "Your regulars at the restaurant aren't going to like eating next to former gang members," Sullivan observed. "Already taken care of," Big Jim replied. "Had 6 of them in for breakfast this morning, Jake and Daniel. Did security work, kept the parking lot safe. Customers actually thanked them on the way out." Claire added, "Overnight calls about suspicious motorcycles dropped to 0. Turns out having former gang members protecting the community works better than having them terrorize it." Sullivan made notes in his briefcase, watching as the pavilion began taking shape. The men worked seamlessly together, their previous rivalries forgotten in the focus of honest work. "There's something else you should see," Marcus said, leading Sullivan toward a side building. Inside, several former Scorpions sat with Dr. Thomas Grant, the VA counselor. "PTSD doesn't care what colors you wear," Marcus explained. "These men need help, not handcuffs. Give us 60 days. Let them prove they can change." The morning sun climbed higher as Sullivan observed the transformation happening before him. Veterans who'd been lost to violence were rediscovering their core values. Men who'd never served were learning structure and purpose from their military-trained brothers. A distant rumble of motorcycles tensed everyone briefly, but it was just a delivery of more supplies, brought by other former Scorpions who'd heard about the morning's project. "All right," Sullivan finally said, closing his briefcase. 60 days. But I want documentation, progress reports, and community service hours logged. 1 step backward, and the deals are off." Marcus nodded, then turned back to the construction site. "Jake," he called out, "show Mr. Sullivan your team's progress on the support beams. Let him see what happens when you apply Marine Corps precision to civilian projects." As Sullivan followed Jake toward the construction, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. The real work was just beginning, but the first steps had been taken. These men weren't just building a pavilion. They were rebuilding themselves, one purposeful action at a time. 3 weeks into the rehabilitation program, the change in Oakwood Crossing was palpable. The pavilion stood completed, a testament to what focused manpower and proper guidance could accomplish. Where once residents hurried past groups of bikers, they now stopped to chat with the former Scorpions working security at local businesses. Marcus watched from his office as Jake Matthews led a morning self-defense class for local high school teachers. The former Force Recon Marine moved with practiced patience, showing techniques that emphasized escape and de-escalation rather than confrontation. "Remember," Jake instructed, his voice carrying through the open window, "the goal isn't to fight. It's to create space and get help. These kids look up to you. Show them there's always a better option than violence." The irony of a former gang member teaching nonviolence wasn't lost on anyone, but Jake's sincerity was unmistakable. His own transformation had been the most dramatic, trading his Scorpions cut for khakis and a polo shirt with the Rehabilitation Center's logo. Deputy Claire Wilson entered Marcus's office, her expression troubled. "We've got a situation brewing. Duke Morrison made bail yesterday." Marcus continued watching the class, his face revealing nothing. "Earlier than expected." "That's not all," Claire continued. "He was seen meeting with the Red Iron Brotherhood at their compound just over the county line. Word is he's trying to rally support, claiming we're brainwashing his men." Before Marcus could respond, the rumble of approaching motorcycles drew their attention. Through the window, they watched 3 bikes pull up, not former Scorpions, but members of the Red Iron Brotherhood, their leather cuts displaying a blood-red fist crushing a chain. Jake smoothly ended his class, ensuring the teachers were safely inside before approaching the newcomers. 2 other reformed Scorpions, Daniel and a former Army medic known as Doc, moved to support him. Marcus and Claire stepped outside as the Brotherhood members dismounted. Their leader, a hulking man called Butch, surveyed the rehabilitation center with obvious disdain. "Nice setup you got here," Butch sneered. "Turning warriors into lapdogs. Duke sends his regards, says you'll regret sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." Jake stepped forward, but Marcus's quiet voice stopped him. "Let me handle this." He approached the visitors with the same calm he'd shown during the BBQ joint confrontation. "Mr. Morrison is welcome to his opinions," Marcus said evenly. "These men made their own choices. They chose to remember who they really are." Butch spat on the ground. "They chose to be weak. Duke's offering anyone who comes back full membership in the Brotherhood. Real brotherhood, not this community service bullshit." Some of the rehabilitated veterans tensed, old instincts warring with their new purpose. Marcus watched them carefully, seeing the internal struggle play out. "Tell Duke," Jake called out, his voice firm, "that real brotherhood isn't about patches or territories. It's about having each other's backs for the right reasons." Butch's face darkened. "You'll regret this, traitor. All of you. The Brotherhood doesn't forget, and we don't forgive." As the bikers roared away, Marcus gathered his men. More reformed Scorpions had arrived, drawn by the commotion. They formed a circle in the newly built pavilion, the morning sun casting their shadows long across the wooden floor. "They'll be back," Daniel said quietly. "Duke knows too much about us. Our families." Marcus nodded. "Which is exactly why we need to be smarter, not harder. Violence is their only tool. We have something better." "Community," Jake realized, understanding dawning in his eyes. "The same people we used to terrorize. They're our strength now." Emma Thompson's arrival interrupted their planning. She carried several bags of food from the restaurant, her face concerned but determined. "Big Jim sent lunch," she announced. "Said you boys need to keep your strength up. And Marcus," she hesitated, "the business owners are meeting tonight at the restaurant. They want to help." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "Tell them to expect us at 7. Jake, get our documentation in order. Mr. Sullivan from the DA's office should see this too." The rest of the day was spent in preparation. Former Scorpions patrolled in pairs, not as gang members, but as community watchmen. They helped elderly residents secure their homes, advised business owners on security measures, and continued their regular rehabilitation work. By evening, Big Jim's BBQ was packed with an unlikely alliance: business owners, reformed gang members, law enforcement, and community leaders. The smell of barbecue mingled with the serious atmosphere as Marcus laid out their situation. "Duke and the Brotherhood think we're weak because we chose a different path," he explained. "They don't understand that true strength comes from unity, not intimidation." Jake spread out maps of the county, marking potential trouble spots. His military training showed in his tactical assessment, but now it was being used to protect rather than threaten. "We've got veterans with combat experience, local knowledge, and something worth fighting for," he explained. "But we do this smart, not angry." The business owners listened intently as the former gang members outlined their defense plans. There was no talk of violence or retaliation. Instead, they discussed camera systems, communication networks, and community alert procedures. "Times like this," Emma said softly to Marcus, "I wonder if Duke realizes what he's really up against. He thinks he's fighting a bunch of reformed bikers." Marcus watched as his men integrated with the community, sharing ideas and building trust. What he's really fighting is the human capacity for change, and that's a battle he can't win. As the meeting wound down, Sullivan from the DA's office made a surprise appearance. He stood silently in the back, observing the interaction between former criminals and community leaders. The transformation was undeniable. Men who once inspired fear now generated hope. The question wasn't whether they could defend against Duke's threats. It was whether they could do it while staying true to their new path. The evening ended with a sense of unified purpose. As the reformed Scorpions escorted community members to their cars, their protective instincts now channeled into positive action, Marcus knew the real test was just beginning. Duke's return wasn't just a threat to their rehabilitation program, it was a challenge to the very idea that change was possible. But looking at the mix of people leaving Big Jim's BBQ that night, Marcus saw something Duke never could. A community united was stronger than any gang's intimidation. Dawn broke over Oakwood Crossing with an uneasy stillness. The rehabilitation center's morning PT session was interrupted by the urgent arrival of Deputy Claire Wilson's patrol car. She pulled Jake and Marcus aside immediately, her expression grim. 3 Brotherhood members were spotted outside Emma Thompson's house last night, she reported quietly. They didn't do anything, just sat there watching. Duke's sending a message. Marcus's face hardened slightly, the first real display of anger he'd shown since this began. "How's Emma?" Shaken, but more angry than scared. Big Jim stayed at her place last night, shotgun across his lap. She insisted on opening the restaurant this morning, said she won't be intimidated. Jake's fists clenched. "This is different from their usual tactics. Duke's trying to draw us out, make us react like we would have before." The rest of the reformed Scorpions had gathered closer, sensing the tension. Daniel stepped forward, his Army Ranger training evident in his tactical assessment. "We can't leave our people unprotected, but we can't fall back into gang behavior either." Marcus surveyed his men, seeing the struggle in their eyes, the pull between their new path and the familiar urge for violent retribution. Time to show Duke what real protection looks like. "Jake, get everyone inside. We need to adjust our strategy." In the pavilion, Marcus laid out a county map marked with the homes and businesses of everyone connected to the rehabilitation program. The former Scorpions gathered around, their body language a mix of military precision and barely contained fury. "Duke thinks he knows our playbook because he knows who we used to be," Marcus began. "He's expecting us to retaliate, to prove his point that we're still just thugs playing at Reformation. We're going to show him something different." Over the next hour, Marcus outlined a protection strategy that drew on military precision rather than gang tactics. Teams were organized, communications established, and protocols set up that emphasized prevention over confrontation. "Remember," he concluded, "we're not defending territory anymore. We're protecting community. That means smart, not brutal. Professional, not personal." The morning unfolded according to their new plan. Reformed Scorpions, now dressed in plain clothes with discreet security earpieces, positioned themselves throughout town. They coordinated with local businesses, established observation posts, and maintained constant radio contact. At Big Jim's BBQ, Emma worked her usual shift, while two former gang members sat quietly at different tables, appearing to be regular customers as they monitored the situation. The sight of Brotherhood riders doing drive-bys was met with calm observation and documented evidence rather than aggressive responses. By afternoon, Duke made his first real move. 6 Brotherhood members rolled into town, stopping at businesses known to support the rehabilitation program. They didn't make explicit threats, just asked pointed questions about protection services and insurance coverage. The reformed Scorpions maintained their discipline. Each incident was photographed, recorded, and reported to law enforcement. Local business owners, rather than cowering, greeted the intimidation attempts with unified disdain. The situation came to a head at Thompson's Hardware, where Frank Thompson, Emma's brother, ran his family's century-old business. 3 Brotherhood members entered, making a show of examining expensive power tools while making veiled comments about fire safety. Jake was inside within 30 seconds of their arrival, having been monitoring the situation from across the street. He entered casually, nodding to Frank as he browsed the paint section. 2 more reformed Scorpions positioned themselves outside, photographing the Brotherhood members' bikes and license plates. "Interesting strategy," came Duke's voice from the doorway. He stepped inside, looking different in expensive clothes rather than his usual leather. "Surveillance and documentation instead of cracked skulls. Marcus has really done a number on you boys." Jake turned slowly, maintaining his calm. "Hello, Duke. Here to buy some home improvement supplies?" "Just checking in on old friends." Duke smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Making sure you haven't forgotten who you really are." "We haven't forgotten," Jake replied. "We've remembered. There's a difference." Duke moved closer, his voice dropping. "You think this changes anything? You think playing security guard makes up for what we did in those 3 counties up north? The people we hurt? The businesses we burned?" "No," Jake admitted. "Nothing makes up for that. But we can choose to do better going forward. The offer to join us still stands, Duke. Even for you." Rage flashed across Duke's face. "You sound just like him now. All wisdom and second chances. Let's see how wise you feel when—" He was cut off by the arrival of 3 police cruisers outside, lights flashing. Deputy Wilson stepped in, accompanied by Sullivan from the DA's office.
"Mr. Morrison?" Sullivan spoke first. "Interesting coincidence finding you here. We were just reviewing some security footage from recent incidents. Perhaps you'd like to discuss it down at the station?"
Duke's face remained neutral, but his eyes betrayed his surprise. He hadn't expected this level of coordination between law enforcement and his former men. "Just having a friendly conversation," he said smoothly. "No law against that." "Actually," Sullivan replied, holding up a document, "your bail conditions specifically prohibit contact with former associates. Shall we discuss the implications?" The moment hung in the balance. Everyone in the store could feel the potential for violence simmering beneath the surface. But the reformed Scorpions held their positions, professional and restrained. Duke finally backed away, his smile now brittle. "Another time then." He looked at Jake. "Remember what I said. You can't erase the past by playing hero." After he left, Jake helped Frank Thompson close up the shop. Other reformed Scorpions maintained their surveillance as Brotherhood members slowly filtered out of town. That evening, as Marcus reviewed the day's events with his men, Emma arrived with coffee and her signature cornbread. "Heard what happened at Frank's store," she said. "Time was, those kinds of threats would have led to a war." "Time was," Marcus agreed. "These men fought for the wrong reasons. Now they're learning to fight the right way, with discipline, patience, and community behind them." But as night fell over Oakwood Crossing, everyone knew this was just the beginning. Duke's failed intimidation attempt would only push him toward more desperate measures. The real test of the reformed Scorpion's transformation was still to come. 3 days of uneasy quiet followed the hardware store confrontation. The reformed Scorpions maintained their vigilance, but Duke and the Brotherhood seemed to have retreated to plan their next move. It was the calm before the storm, and everyone in Oakwood Crossing could feel it. Marcus sat in his office at the rehabilitation center, reviewing security reports with Jake and Daniel when Doc burst in, his face pale. "You need to see this," he said, holding up his phone. A video was playing, showing Duke Morrison standing in front of the Red Iron Brotherhood's compound. "To all former Black Scorpions," Duke's recorded voice rang out, "your time playing community hero is over. We have something that belongs to you, something that might make you remember who you really are." The camera panned to show a warehouse behind him, the former Black Scorpions clubhouse, abandoned since their reformation. "Everything's still here," Duke continued, gesturing to the building. "Your colors, your trophies, your records. By midnight tomorrow, it all burns. Unless, of course, you want to come claim it. Prove you're still men, not Marcus's trained puppies." Jake's face darkened. "The records," he said quietly. "All our past activities, every crime, every victim. Duke's going to send it to the feds if we don't show." "He's trying to force our hand," Daniel added. "Make us choose between our new path and facing consequences for our past." Marcus studied the men before him, seeing the weight of their pasts pressing down on them. "What's in those records?" he asked quietly. "Don't generalize. Be specific." The former Scorpions exchanged glances before Jake spoke. "Protection rackets across 3 counties, arsons, assaults, names, dates, locations, everything Duke used to keep us in line. Evidence that could put most of us away for decades." Marcus nodded slowly. "And if that evidence comes out, what happens to the rehabilitation program? To everything we've built here?" "It all ends," Daniel replied. "No DA will support reforming gang members when they see what we really did. We'll lose everything. The program, our freedom, our chance to make things right." The room fell silent as the weight of the situation settled over them. Duke had found their pressure point, the fear of losing not just their new lives but their opportunity to atone for past sins. "He expects us to come in force," Jake analyzed, military training kicking in. "Probably has the Brotherhood ready for a war. If we take the bait, we prove him right about us." Marcus stood, moving to the window that overlooked the training yard, where other reformed gang members were teaching local kids self-defense. "What if we handle this the way Marines handle hostile intelligence?" Jake's eyes lit up with understanding. "Surgical retrieval, small team, precision operation." "With one key difference," Marcus added. "We do this completely legal. No masks, no violence, no revenge. We go in smart, not hard." The next few hours were a flurry of activity. Marcus made calls while his men gathered intelligence. By evening, a plan had formed that none of them would have considered in their previous lives. Sullivan from the DA's office arrived first, followed by Deputy Wilson and representatives from 2 neighboring counties' sheriff departments. The reformed Scorpions gathered in the pavilion, now transformed into an operations center. "Duke's right about one thing," Marcus addressed the group. "You can't erase your past, but you can face it honestly and work to make amends. That's what we're doing tomorrow, not hiding from our history, but confronting it the right way." The plan they outlined was audacious in its simplicity. While Duke expected a gang war, they would give him something entirely different: accountability and transparency. As midnight approached, Jake led a small team through final preparations. They weren't checking weapons or donning gang colors. Instead, they reviewed legal documents and practiced their statements. Emma arrived with coffee and food, finding the transformed gang members preparing for battle in a way she'd never imagined, with paperwork and proper procedures. "You boys be careful tomorrow," she said, her voice carrying both concern and pride. "Sometimes the bravest thing isn't charging in with fists raised. It's facing your past with your head held high." Marcus watched his men through the night, seeing their struggle between old instincts and new principles. The next day would test everything they'd learned about transformation. Duke thought he was forcing them to choose between their past and present. Instead, he was giving them the opportunity to prove just how complete their change had become. The question wasn't whether they could retrieve the records. It was whether they could do it while staying true to their new path. As dawn approached, Marcus knew that the next 24 hours would either validate everything they'd built or destroy it completely. In the early morning light, Jake found Marcus standing alone in the pavilion. "You know," Jake said quietly, "when you took us down at Big Jim's, I thought that was the hardest fight of my life. But this, facing our past without falling back into it, this is different." Marcus nodded. "The hardest battles are always fought within ourselves. Duke thinks he's forcing you back into your old lives. Instead, he's giving you the chance to show everyone, including yourselves, that your transformation is real." As the sun rose over Oakwood Crossing, the reformed Scorpions prepared for a confrontation unlike any they'd faced before. This wouldn't be settled with fists or force, but with something far more powerful: the strength to face their past without letting it determine their future. At precisely 11 a.m., a convoy approached the old Black Scorpions clubhouse. But it wasn't the army of bikers Duke Morrison expected to see. Instead, 3 official vehicles led the way: Deputy Wilson's patrol car, an SUV carrying DA Sullivan and county officials, and a marked vehicle from the fire marshal's office. Behind them came Marcus's truck and 2 other vehicles carrying selected reformed Scorpions, all dressed not in leather cuts but in pressed shirts and slacks. News vans from local stations followed at a distance, invited by design rather than chance. Duke stood in front of the clubhouse, flanked by Red Iron Brotherhood members. His confident smirk faltered slightly at the unexpected approach. Instead of a gang war, he was watching what appeared to be an official inspection. Jake Matthews stepped out first, adjusting his tie, a far cry from his former biker appearance. He carried a leather briefcase rather than weapons, and his bearing was pure professional rather than threatening. "Mr. Morrison," Sullivan called out, approaching with a document in hand. "We're here to execute a legal inspection of this property following reports of unsafe storage conditions and potential fire code violations." Duke's face darkened. "This is private property. You have no right." "Actually," Jake interrupted, opening his briefcase, "we have documentation showing this property is still legally leased to the original Black Scorpions LLC, of which I remain a registered officer. As such, I'm authorizing this inspection." The Brotherhood members shifted uneasily, this legal approach throwing them off balance. They'd prepared for violence, not paperwork. Marcus stayed back, watching his men handle the situation with a dignity that would have been unimaginable months ago. Daniel and Doc positioned themselves strategically, not as enforcers but as official witnesses. "You think this changes anything?" Duke sneered. "One match and all your precious records go up in smoke before they can cross the threshold." "That would be unwise," came a new voice. The fire marshal stepped forward. "Intentionally destroying evidence during an official inspection carries severe penalties. Moreover, we have concerns about hazardous material storage that require immediate assessment." What followed was a masterclass in legal procedure. While Duke and the Brotherhood fumed, officials methodically documented everything. News cameras rolled as reformed gang members assisted law enforcement in a professional capacity. And the real moment of truth came when they reached the records room. Duke moved to block the door, his hand straying toward his jacket. "Last chance to handle this the old way, boys. Remember who you are." Jake stepped forward, but not aggressively. "We remember exactly who we are, Duke. That's why we're here with badges and warrants instead of chains and fists. You wanted us to prove we're still men? This is what real men do. They face their past and take responsibility for it." For a long moment, tension hung in the air. The Brotherhood members looked to Duke, waiting for the signal to start what they'd come for. But something in Jake's words seemed to reach a few of them. They saw their possible future in these transformed men. "The records don't just implicate us," Jake continued softly. "They detail everything, Duke, including your orders, your connections, your suppliers. You really want the feds going through all that?" Duke's face went pale as the implications sank in. He'd been so focused on destroying his former men that he'd forgotten how deeply the records could burn him too. The next hour was anticlimactic in its efficiency. Officials cataloged and removed boxes of records while news cameras documented everything. The reformed Scorpions maintained their professional demeanor, helping with the inventory under law enforcement supervision. "You'll all burn for this," Duke growled as the last box was loaded. "The Brotherhood won't forget this betrayal." "No betrayal here," Marcus finally spoke, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "Just men choosing a better path. The offer to join us still stands. For all of you." He looked pointedly at several Brotherhood members who'd been watching the proceedings with increasing uncertainty. The seed of doubt had been planted. They'd come expecting to witness the failure of Reformation, but instead saw evidence of its success. As the convoy prepared to leave, Jake approached Duke one last time. "You taught us that strength means taking what you want through fear and violence. Marcus taught us that real strength is having the courage to face your past and choose a different future. Think about that, Duke." The drive back to Oakwood Crossing was quiet, each man lost in his thoughts. They'd faced their moment of truth and chosen the harder but better path. The records they'd recovered would indeed have consequences, but they'd face them openly and honestly. At Big Jim's BBQ that evening, Emma served coffee to the men who'd once terrorized her restaurant. "You boys did good today," she said simply. "Prove that people really can change when they want to." Marcus watched his men. No longer gang members playing at reform, but truly transformed individuals. They'd faced their past without compromising their new principles. Duke had tried to force them back into their old lives, but instead had only succeeded in proving how far they'd come. But as the sun set over Oakwood Crossing, they all knew this victory, while significant, was just another step in their ongoing transformation. Duke and the Brotherhood were still out there, and now they were more dangerous than ever, wounded in pride and stripped of their leverage. The real test wasn't over. It was about to enter its most challenging phase. The impact of the clubhouse operation rippled through the criminal underworld like aftershocks from an earthquake. Within 48 hours, the rehabilitation center received an unprecedented wave of visitors, not threats or enemies, but members of other gangs seeking a way out. Marcus stood at his office window, watching as Jake and Daniel interviewed 3 members of the Steel Vipers who turned up at dawn. These weren't hardened criminals looking to infiltrate. They were tired men who'd seen proof that change was possible. "Fourth group this week," Deputy Claire Wilson noted, joining Marcus at the window. "Word's spreading. What you did at the clubhouse, handling it legally, professionally, it's changing the narrative." "Duke's plan backfired," Marcus replied quietly. "He wanted to expose our past to destroy our future. Instead, he showed others that confronting your history doesn't have to mean being trapped by it." The rehabilitation center had transformed into a hub of activity. Dr. Thomas Grant had brought in additional counselors to handle the influx of new participants. The pavilion now hosted back-to-back sessions of therapy, job training, and life skills classes. But success brought its own challenges. Around noon, Sullivan arrived from the DA's office, his expression troubled. "We've got complications," he announced in Marcus's office. "The records you recovered, they implicate people in high places, corrupt officials, dirty cops, businesses laundering money through the gang networks." Jake, who'd joined them, straightened in his chair. "How high are we talking?" "County commissioner level, 2 judges, several prominent business leaders." Sullivan spread photos across the desk. "These people won't take exposure lightly. They've got too much to lose." Marcus studied the evidence silently. The transformation they'd started had grown beyond gang reformation. They were now threatening an entire system of corruption. A commotion outside drew their attention. Emma Thompson's truck had arrived, but something was wrong. She hurried inside, her usual calm demeanor shaken. "They came to the restaurant," she reported, hands trembling slightly. "Not Brotherhood members, men in suits, said they were health inspectors, but their questions, they were looking for leverage." Marcus's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Targeting Emma crossed a line. "They're getting desperate," he observed, switching from brute force to bureaucratic pressure. "It's not just Big Jim's," Claire added, checking her phone. "The hardware store got a surprise tax audit. The community center's permits are suddenly under review. They're trying to strangle our support network." The reformed Scorpions gathered in the pavilion for an emergency meeting. The atmosphere was tense. This wasn't a threat they could handle with either physical skills or legal procedures. "We knew the records would have consequences," Jake addressed the group. "But this is bigger than gang territory now. We're up against people who wear suits instead of leather, who fight with paperwork instead of chains." Daniel stood, his military strategic training evident in his analysis. "They're targeting our community support because that's our strength. Without local businesses backing us, the rehabilitation program dies." "Then we protect them," came a new voice. Frank Thompson stood in the pavilion entrance, other business owners behind him. "You've been defending us from physical threats. Maybe it's time we return the favor?" What followed was unlike any strategy session in the center's history. Business owners, reformed gang members, and legal experts worked together, crafting a response that combined community solidarity with professional expertise. Local lawyers offered pro bono services. Accountants volunteered to audit books and ensure compliance. The reformed Scorpions provided security, while business owners navigated bureaucratic challenges. "See, what they don't understand," Marcus told his men quietly, "is that real community doesn't break under pressure. It gets stronger." By evening, their counter-strategy was in motion. Every business that supported the rehabilitation program had legal representation. Documentation proving compliance was gathered. Security measures were enhanced against both physical and administrative threats. But the real surprise came from unexpected quarters. 3 police officers from neighboring counties arrived, carrying files of their own. They'd been gathering evidence of corruption for years, but lacked the leverage to act. "The records you recovered," one officer explained. "They're the missing pieces. Names, dates, money trails, everything we need to clean house." As night fell over Oakwood Crossing, the transformed gang members found themselves in an ironic position. Their past misdeeds might be the key to exposing corruption at the highest levels. Emma, serving coffee to the strategy group, summed it up best. "You boys started out just trying to change yourselves. Looks like you might end up changing the whole system." Marcus watched his men adapt to this new challenge, seeing them apply their skills in ways they'd never imagined. The transformation that began in a BBQ joint had evolved into something far more significant. A full-scale reformation of not just individuals, but institutions. But as reports came in of more pressure being applied to their supporters, everyone knew the real fight was just beginning. The corrupt power structure wouldn't go down without a battle, and Duke and the Brotherhood were still out there, now potentially aligned with even more dangerous forces. The question wasn't whether they could handle what was coming, it was whether they could do it while staying true to their new principles. The morning newspaper painted a stark picture. Above the fold, a headline read, "Local businesses face unprecedented scrutiny after supporting rehabilitation program." Below it, a photo showed Big Jim's BBQ with official notices plastered on its windows. Marcus sat at his usual corner table in the nearly empty restaurant, the morning sun casting long shadows across the normally bustling dining room. Health department officials had spent hours the previous day conducting their routine inspection, leaving behind a list of violations that would cost thousands to address. "Coffee's still hot," Emma announced, filling his cup with her usual efficiency, though the strain showed in her eyes. "They can inspect our floors 100 times, but they can't stop us from serving the best breakfast in 3 counties. The bell above the door chimed as Jake entered, followed by 3 other reformed Scorpions. They'd traded their usual casual clothes for suits. They were due in court to testify about the recovered records. "Looking sharp," Big Jim called from behind the counter, his voice carrying its usual cheer despite the notices on his windows. "Might have to start calling you sir instead of Jake." Before Jake could respond, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside. Through the window, they watched as 2 men in expensive suits emerged, carrying briefcases that probably cost more than a month's earnings at the restaurant. "Right on schedule," Marcus noted quietly, not moving from his seat. The carrot after the stick. The men entered, surveying the nearly empty restaurant with calculated disdain. The taller one approached Marcus's table directly, while his partner remained by the door. "Mr. Reynolds," the man smiled without warmth. I'm Richard Hawthorne, representing certain interested parties. May we speak privately? Marcus gestured to the empty chair across from him. Anything you have to say can be said here, Mr. Hawthorne. We believe in transparency these days. Hawthorne's smile tightened as he sat, placing his briefcase on the table. Very well. I'll be direct. The evidence you've recovered has created a delicate situation. My clients are prepared to be generous in exchange for discretion. He opened his briefcase, removing a document. Full funding for your rehabilitation program. New facilities. Political support for expansion to other counties. All we ask is that certain names and transactions be redacted from the records before they reach the federal investigation. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Emma had stopped mid-pour at the counter. Jake and his men stood perfectly still, their court-ready suits suddenly feeling like armor. Marcus took a slow sip of his coffee, studying Hawthorne over the rim of his cup. Interesting offer, but I think you misunderstand something fundamental about our program, Mr. Hawthorne. Oh, Hawthorne raised an eyebrow. And what's that? We're not in the business of selling redemption anymore. We're in the business of earning it. Hawthorne's facade cracked slightly. Don't be naive. You're up against people who can crush this entire town. One phone call, and every business that supports you will face audits, inspections, license reviews. You mean like these? Big Jim interrupted, walking over with the health department notices. Already happening, son. And you know what? We're still here. Jake stepped forward, straightening his tie. See, that's the difference between your clients and us, Mr. Hawthorne. We've learned that real strength isn't about who you can crush. It's about who you can lift up. The second suit by the door shifted uncomfortably as other vehicles began arriving. Local business owners, community leaders, reformed gang members, all gathering for what they knew would be a crucial moment. This is your final opportunity, Hawthorne warned, standing. After this, there's no protection. Marcus finally turned his full attention to the lawyer. Protection was the old way, Mr. Hawthorne. We're building something different now. Something your clients can't buy or threaten away. And what's that? Community, Emma answered, stepping forward with fresh coffee. Family. Truth. Want a cup before you go? On the house. We still believe in hospitality, even when folks come to threaten us. Hawthorne's composure slipped further as he looked around the restaurant. Where he'd expected to find frightened people ready to compromise, he found steady gazes and resolved faces. The power dynamic he'd counted on no longer existed. You're making a serious mistake, he said, gathering his briefcase. When the full force comes, Marcus interrupted quietly, it'll find something it's never faced before. A community that stands together. People who've learned that doing right matters more than doing what's easy. As the lawyers retreated to their SUV, the restaurant slowly filled with supporters. Deputy Claire Wilson arrived with Sullivan from the DA's office. Dr. Grant brought new files documenting the program's success. Local business owners came with their own stories of pressure and resistance. They'll escalate after this, Jake noted, watching the SUV disappear. Hawthorne's clients won't take rejection well. Marcus nodded, finally standing. Good. Let them show everyone who they really are. We've got nothing to hide anymore. Emma started serving coffee to the gathered crowd as Big Jim fired up the grill. The health department notices still hung in the windows, but somehow they seemed less threatening now, more like badges of honor than marks of shame. The transformation that had started with a simple confrontation in this very restaurant had grown into something its participants had never imagined. A full-scale challenge to corruption that had festered for decades. As the morning sun rose higher, casting those health department notices in stark relief, Marcus watched his reformed men helping serve breakfast to the community that had chosen to stand with them. Each cup of coffee, each handshake, each shared moment of solidarity was another brick in the foundation of something corrupt power couldn't touch. The real battle was just beginning, but they'd already won something precious. The understanding that true strength comes not from what you can destroy, but from what you choose to build together. The pressure campaign escalated with surgical precision over the next week. Every business supporting the rehabilitation program faced a barrage of inspections, citations, and bureaucratic harassment. But something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking under the strain, Oakwood Crossing adapted and evolved. When health inspectors shut down Big Jim's BBQ over alleged violations, the community transformed the rehabilitation center's pavilion into a temporary restaurant. Emma Thompson and Big Jim served their famous dishes while reformed gang members handled security and service. "Never thought I'd see the day," Emma remarked, watching Jake Matthews expertly balance plates of burnt ends while wearing an improvised waiter's apron over his tactical gear. Former Scorpions taking drink orders and making sure the sweet tea stays full. The pavilion had become more than just a dining space. It was now command central for their resistance against corruption. Maps and documents covered one wall, tracking the connections between Duke Morrison, the Red Iron Brotherhood, and the powerful figures trying to shut them down. Marcus was reviewing these documents when Deputy Claire Wilson arrived with urgent news. "They've frozen the program's accounts," she reported, "called it a routine audit, but we all know better." Before Marcus could respond, Daniel burst in. "We've got movement at the county line. Brotherhood riders, at least 30 of them. But something's different. They're with Duke, and he's in a suit." Marcus studied the photos Daniel had taken. Duke Morrison had indeed traded his leather for expensive tailoring, looking more like a business executive than a gang leader. The transformation wasn't an improvement. It made him look more dangerous, not less. "They're learning," Marcus observed quietly. "Combining gang intimidation with corporate pressure. Smart move." The Brotherhood riders split into small groups, each targeting different businesses around town. But instead of their usual aggressive tactics, they came as customers, ordering food, shopping, making small talk. All while men in suits conducted market research that sounded more like veiled threats. At Thompson's Hardware, Frank Thompson watched tensely as Brotherhood members browsed his aisles while a consultant discussed the possibility of a big box store opening nearby. "Shame if a small operation like this couldn't compete," the man said smoothly. But the town's response wasn't what they expected. When Brotherhood members entered shops, they found themselves subtly surrounded by reformed Scorpions posing as customers. When suits attempted their intimidation, business owners recorded everything openly on their phones. The confrontation reached its peak at the temporary restaurant in the pavilion. Duke himself arrived, flanked by both bikers and businessmen. He found Marcus sitting at a corner table, much like their first meeting at Big Jim's. "Nice setup," Duke observed, taking in the bustling scene. "Community center, dining hall, resistance headquarters all in one. Very efficient." "Have a seat," Marcus offered, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Emma's cornbread is fresh out of the oven." Duke sat, his expensive suit creasing perfectly. "You know, I finally figured it out. Why this transformation of yours works so well. It's not about rehabilitation. It's about power. You've built something stronger than a gang. You've created a movement." "Wrong conclusion," Marcus replied calmly. "We haven't built anything. We've just reminded people of what was already here. Community, dignity, purpose." "Noble words." Duke smiled thinly. "But let's be practical. You've got something we want. Those records. We've got something you need. The power to make all these problems go away. Simple business." Emma approached with coffee, her presence interrupting Duke's pitch. She poured for both men, her hands steady despite the tension. "Sugar's on the table," she said simply, "just like always." Duke waited until she left before continuing. "One call from my new friends, and every business supporting you goes under. Permits denied, loans called in, licenses revoked. This little experiment in reformation ends." Marcus took a slow sip of his coffee, studying Duke over the rim. The former gang leader had changed, but not in the way he thought. He'd just traded one form of corruption for another, leather for silk. You still don't understand what's happening here, do you?" Marcus set down his cup. "Look around!" The pavilion was filled with an unlikely mix. Former gang members serving food alongside business owners, community leaders chatting with reformed criminals, families breaking bread with the very men they once feared. "These people," Marcus continued, "they're not fighting for a program or even for justice. They're fighting for each other. That's something your new friends can't buy or threaten away." "Everyone has a breaking point," Duke insisted. "It's just a matter of finding the right pressure." As if on cue, several suited men entered the pavilion, carrying more documents and notices. But they found themselves facing not just Marcus and his reformed men, but an entire community united in quiet resistance. Jake approached the table, now changed from his waiter's apron back into his security role. "Got some interesting information about those routine audits you've been arranging," he told Duke. "Amazing what people will reveal when they think they're on the winning side." Duke's expression flickered slightly. "Careful, Jake. Some roads you can't walk back from."
"We learned that from you," Jake replied. "The difference is, we're walking forward now."
The confrontation had drawn the attention of everyone in the pavilion. The suited men shifted uncomfortably, finding themselves surrounded by calm, determined faces. This wasn't the frightened community they'd expected to intimidate. Marcus stood slowly, his voice carrying across the now quiet space. "Take a message back to your new friends, Duke. We're not buying, we're not selling, and we're not backing down. What happens next is up to them." Duke rose as well, straightening his expensive tie. "You're forcing this to get ugly." "No," Marcus corrected him. "We're forcing it to get honest. There's a difference." As Duke and his entourage left the pavilion, the community gathered closer. Emma brought fresh coffee, Big Jim started serving dinner, and the reformed Scorpions resumed their positions. Some as security, others as servers, all as part of something bigger than themselves. But everyone knew this was just the prelude. Duke's transformation from gang leader to corporate enforcer meant the final confrontation would be unlike anything they'd prepared for. The real question wasn't whether they could withstand what was coming. It was whether they could do it without losing the very values they were fighting to protect. The storm broke at dawn on a quiet Tuesday. A fleet of official vehicles descended on Oakwood Crossing. Health inspectors, code enforcement, tax auditors, and licensing officials. Behind them came news vans, drawn by anonymous tips about widespread corruption in the rehabilitation program. Marcus stood in the rehabilitation center's parking lot, watching as teams of inspectors spread throughout the town. Jake and Daniel flanked him, all three men calm despite the chaos unfolding around them. "Right on schedule," Marcus noted, checking his watch. "They're nothing if not predictable." At Big Jim's BBQ, health inspectors were conducting their third emergency inspection in a week. Emma Thompson calmly served them coffee while recording every moment on the security cameras Jake had installed. The hardware store faced a surprise OSHA inspection. Frank Thompson welcomed them with detailed safety logs prepared by former Scorpions who'd taken certification courses specifically for this moment. But the real attack came at the bank. Duke Morrison, still in his expensive suit, arrived with a team of auditors and a court order to freeze all assets connected to the rehabilitation program. "This ends today," Duke announced to the gathered crowd outside the bank. "These so-called reformed criminals have been operating an illegal enterprise, laundering money through legitimate businesses." He held up documents with official seals. "We have evidence of widespread fraud. Every business that supported them will be investigated. Every account will be audited. Every permit reviewed." The crowd's reaction wasn't what he expected. Instead of panic, there was an almost eerily calm response. Business owners exchanged knowing looks. Reformed gang members maintained their professional composure. Marcus stepped forward, his own manila envelope in hand. "Interesting timing, Duke. We were just about to make our own announcement." Sullivan from the DA's office emerged from the crowd, accompanied by federal agents. "Mr. Morrison," he called out, "I believe you dropped something at the clubhouse." He held up a familiar ledger, one of the many records they'd recovered. Duke's confident smile faltered slightly. "Those records were obtained illegally." "Actually," Jake interrupted, stepping forward with more documents. "They were retrieved through a legal inspection, fully documented and witnessed. But more interesting is what they reveal about your new friends. Marcus addressed the growing crowd, including the news cameras that Duke had invited. The records don't just show gang activities. They show a network of corruption reaching into city halls, courthouses, and corporate boardrooms. A system that used gangs to do their dirty work while keeping their own hands clean. The federal agents moved forward as Sullivan continued. Money laundering, racketeering, corruption of public officials, all documented in meticulous detail. Duke wasn't just keeping records of gang activities, he was keeping insurance. Duke's face darkened as he realized his mistake. He'd been so focused on using the system against them that he hadn't considered they might use it against him. "This is absurd," he sputtered. "You can't possibly—" "Actually, we can," came a new voice. Richard Hawthorne, the smooth lawyer who'd tried to buy their silence, approached with his own briefcase. "My clients have decided to cooperate fully with the investigation. They seem to think their chances are better if they talk first." The scene that unfolded next would be talked about in Oakwood Crossing for years. As federal agents began making arrests, including several prominent officials who'd arrived to support the inspections, the community gathered closer. Emma Thompson kept the coffee flowing. Big Jim fired up his grill in defiance of the health department notices. The reformed Scorpions maintained order with professional calm, their transformation from intimidators to protectors now complete. "You know what your biggest mistake was?" Marcus asked Duke quietly as agents approached. "You thought power came from what you could take from people. We learned it comes from what you can build together." The inspection teams, realizing their political cover was evaporating, began making hasty retreats. The news cameras captured it all, not just the arrests, but the sight of a community standing united, former criminals working alongside business owners, everyone protecting what they'd built together. As the dust settled, Jake found Marcus watching the scene from the pavilion steps. "Think it's really over?" Marcus shook his head slightly. "The arrests? Maybe. The transformation? That's just beginning." Around them, the community was already adapting to its new reality. The reformed Scorpions had proven themselves not just to others, but to themselves. They weren't just playing at change anymore. They were living it, leading it, building something that would last. Emma brought fresh coffee to the pavilion, her smile bright despite the chaos of the day. "Well, boys," she said, surveying the scene of federal agents and reformed gang members working side by side. "Looks like we finally got ourselves a proper cleanup in this town." The sun climbed higher over Oakwood Crossing, casting new shadows on old streets. The transformation that had started with a confrontation in a BBQ joint had grown into something none of them could have imagined. A complete reformation not just of individuals, but of an entire community's soul. The morning after the arrests, Oakwood Crossing woke to a changed landscape. News vans still crowded the streets, but they were telling a different story now. One of community triumph over corruption, of reformation over revenge. Marcus arrived at Big Jim's BBQ to find all the health department notices gone, replaced by a single official document clearing the restaurant of all violations. Inside, the breakfast crowd was larger than ever, a mix of locals and visitors drawn by the previous day's events. "Had to make 3 extra batches of biscuits," Emma reported, pouring his coffee with her usual precision. "Seems taking down a corruption ring does wonders for business." Jake entered, looking surprisingly comfortable in a suit despite the early hour. He'd been up most of the night, working with federal agents to process the mountain of evidence they'd accumulated. "You're not going to believe this," he said, sliding into the seat across from Marcus. "The feds found offshore accounts, shell companies, decades of kickbacks. Duke's records weren't just thorough, they were a roadmap to the whole operation." Marcus nodded, unsurprised. "He was smart enough to keep insurance, just not smart enough to keep it safe." The bell above the door chimed constantly as more people arrived. Members of the Red Iron Brotherhood, looking uncertain without their leader, came in groups of 2 and 3. They found themselves greeted not with hostility, but with cautious welcome. "Coffee?" Emma offered one group, her smile genuine. "Fresh pot just finished." The reformed Scorpions, now officially recognized as community security consultants, maintained a professional presence while helping guide their former rivals toward the same path they'd taken. Daniel entered with more news from the ongoing investigation. Sullivan says they're looking at over 50 indictments. Judges, commissioners, business leaders, the whole network's coming down. But the real transformation was happening in quieter ways. At the rehabilitation center, Dr. Grant's phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Gang members from 3 states were reaching out, asking about the program. The pavilion was packed with new faces, all drawn by the possibility of genuine change. "We're going to need a bigger facility," Dr. Grant told Marcus during a brief consultation. "And more counselors. The waiting list keeps growing." Throughout the day, reporters sought interviews with the reformed Scorpions, fascinated by their journey from intimidators to community protectors. Jake handled most of the media requests, his natural leadership now channeled into positive representation. "It's not just about leaving the gang life," he explained to one reporter while helping unload supplies at the hardware store. "It's about finding something better to belong to, something worth protecting instead of destroying." By afternoon, the rehabilitation center had become an impromptu community center. Business owners met with former gang members, planning security improvements. Local officials, those not implicated in the corruption scandal, worked to streamline support for the expanding program. A group of Brotherhood members, still in their leather cuts, but with a new uncertainty in their bearing, approached Marcus as he supervised the activity. "Is it true?" their spokesman asked. "About the program? About second chances?" Marcus studied them carefully. "Depends on what you're looking for. If you want an easy way out, this isn't it. But if you're ready to do the real work of changing, we're ready to help." Emma arrived with coffee and her famous cornbread, settling any remaining tension. "Best way to start fresh is with a full stomach," she declared, serving the bikers as if they were any other customers. The scene repeated throughout the day. Former enemies sharing meals, telling stories, finding common ground in their desire for transformation. The very forces that Duke had tried to use against them, community connection and public scrutiny, were now working in their favor. Local business owners, led by Big Jim and Frank Thompson, announced a partnership program to provide job training and employment opportunities for program participants. The Sheriff's Department, under Claire's guidance, developed new protocols for working with reformed gang members. As evening approached, Marcus stood in the pavilion doorway, watching the sunset over a transformed Oakwood crossing. Jake joined him, his tie loosened after a long day of interviews and meetings. "You know what's really changing?" Jake observed. "It's not just the gangs or the corruption. It's the way people see possibility now. If we could change, anyone can." Marcus nodded slightly. "That's always been the real mission. Not just stopping the bad, but building something good enough to make it irrelevant." The pavilion behind them hummed with activity. New participants filling out paperwork, counselors conducting initial assessments, reformed Scorpions sharing their experiences with hesitant Brotherhood members. Emma brought them fresh coffee, her presence a constant thread through their story of transformation. "Never thought I'd say this," she smiled, watching the former rivals interact. But maybe those bikers choosing the wrong BBQ joint that day was the right thing after all. The sun set on a community forever changed, not just by what they'd overcome, but by what they'd built in its place. The transformation that began with a confrontation had become a model for something much larger, a testament to the power of genuine change and the strength of a community united in purpose. As the night deepened over Oakwood Crossing, Marcus found himself once again in his usual corner at Big Jim's BBQ. The restaurant was empty now, except for a few trusted friends, Jake, Daniel, Doc, and of course Emma, who refilled their coffee cups with her trademark efficiency. "You know," she said, joining them at the table, "when those Scorpions first rolled into town, I thought it was the end of everything we'd built here. Turns out, it was just the beginning." Jake nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "We came to take something, ended up being given a second chance instead. Still not sure we deserved it." "Deserving isn't the point," Marcus said gently. "It's about choosing. Every day, every moment, choosing to be better than you were. That's the real work of transformation. They sat in contemplative silence, the weight of the past months settling around them. The corruption exposed, the lives changed, the community strengthened. It all wove together into a story none of them could have predicted. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low but determined. So what's next? The arrests, the program expansion, that's all good. But how do we make sure it lasts? That it means something beyond just our little town? Marcus leaned forward, the passion in his eyes undimmed by the late hour. We share our story. We show other communities what's possible when you fight not just against something bad, but for something good. We keep building, keep reforming, one person, one choice at a time. Nods around the table, a quiet commitment to a larger purpose. They'd started this journey as individuals seeking redemption. Now they were part of something bigger, a testament to the transformative power of second chances. The next morning found the rehabilitation center bustling with renewed purpose. Former gang members worked alongside community volunteers, expanding the pavilion, updating the training facilities, preparing for the influx of new participants drawn by Oakwood Crossing's example. Marcus watched it all with quiet satisfaction, seeing not just the physical changes, but the deeper shift taking place. These were men rebuilding not just a program, but their very sense of identity and purpose. Jake emerged from a meeting with new energy, his steps quick and purposeful. Just got off the phone with Sullivan, he reported. The indictments are leading to plea deals. Looks like some of Duke's corporate allies are ready to flip on the bigger fish. Domino effect, Marcus nodded. When corruption starts to crumble, it goes fast. More important is what we build in its place. And build they did. Over the following weeks and months, the Oakwood Crossing model spread, first to neighboring towns, then across the state. Reformed gang members became ambassadors of change, sharing their stories, mentoring others, showing that transformation was possible on a scale beyond what any of them had imagined. Emma's BBQ became a hub of this expanding network, a place where former rivals broke bread together and planned for a future beyond violence and exploitation. Her cornbread became a symbol of the nourishment found in community, in shared purpose, in the hard but healing work of reformation. A year to the day after Duke's attempted takeover, Oakwood Crossing hosted a reunion like no other. Former Scorpions and Brotherhood members, now partners in a statewide reformation movement, gathered in the pavilion they'd built together. Marcus, watching from his familiar corner, marveled at the changes a single year could bring. The power of choice, of community, of relentless commitment to something better. It had transformed not just individuals, but a whole network of lives and towns. As the celebration swirled around him, Marcus found himself thinking back to that first confrontation in Big Jim's. The moment he'd chosen to stand up, to push back, to invite those lost men to find a better path. He hadn't known then the ripples that single choice would create, the lives it would change, the corruption it would topple, the model of reformation it would inspire. He'd simply done what he knew was right, and trusted that others would find their way to that same truth. Now, watching as Jake led a toast to second chances, as Emma served her famous cornbread to tables full of reformed men, as the pavilion rang with the laughter of hard-won camaraderie, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace settle in his bones. This was the legacy of that single choice, not just a program or a movement, but a fundamental shift in what people believed was possible. A testament to the idea that anyone, no matter how lost or broken, could find their way back to the light. As the sun set on that anniversary celebration, Marcus slipped away to his old corner table. He sat there a long while, nursing a cup of coffee, reflecting on all that had changed and all that was yet to come. When Emma found him there, she didn't say a word, just topped off his cup and rested a hand on his shoulder, a quiet acknowledgement of the role he'd played, the difference he'd made, the lives he'd helped transform by the steadiness of his own example. Marcus stayed in that corner long into the night, watching as the pavilion slowly emptied and the town settled into a new kind of quiet. A quiet born not of fear or suppression, but of hard-earned peace and the deep exhale that comes after a battle well fought. In that quiet, Marcus made a silent promise. to always choose the harder right over the easier wrong, to keep believing in the possibility of transformation, no matter how long the road or how steep the climb, to be a steady light in a world all too accustomed to darkness. With that promise in his heart, Marcus finally rose from his corner, stepping out into the night air that suddenly seemed full of new beginnings. He took one last look at the pavilion, at the community center, at all the places where second chances had taken root and started to thrive. Then he turned for home, ready for whatever the new day might bring. Ready to keep building, keep reforming, keep choosing the path of transformation, one moment and one person at a time. It was, after all, the only way forward, the only way to turn a single choice into a legacy that would endure long after he was gone. As Marcus walked into the night, the stars seemed to shine a bit brighter over Oakwood Crossing. A town once shadowed by corruption and violence, now illuminated by the hard-won light of reformation and hope. A testament to the idea that it's never too late for a second chance, and that those second chances, when nurtured by community and commitment, can change the very fabric of the world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.